Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Al-Hekma's online teaching excellence webinar, Lessons Learned. We are very pleased to share with you our experience and teaching practices with our students and ourselves that we found to be successful and useful while teaching online in the last couple of months during the spring semester. I would like to welcome you again and welcome our presenters and faculty members at our Al-Hekma University. We have our guests today, our Professor Michel Olivier, Dr. Shayma Masri, and Dr. Naaman Benton. Thank you very much for being with us and for your time. We will start with Professor Michel Olivier, who is the chair of law at Al-Hekma. She has 30 years of teaching experience at universities in Africa, the UK, and Saudi Arabia. She was awarded a senior teaching fellowship by the British Higher Education Academy. She has more than 40 academic publications in peer-reviewed journals and books chapters. Her research interest includes various aspects of international laws and governance. Thank you, Dr. Michel, and Dr. Michel will share with us her experience in teaching law online.
Thank you very much, Ms. Noura, for that very kind and generous introduction. Let me just open my slides. There you go. Now, as was mentioned by Ms. Noura during the introduction, we welcome this opportunity to talk about our experiences during lockdown. And I will present the perspective coming from the angle of legal education. So that is my topic for this evening. So how I have structured my talk, I will firstly look at what we can learn from global practice, because when lockdown was announced, all universities, all law schools across the world had to resort to online teaching. So there's a lot of practice out there that we can compare ourselves with and that we can establish trends. So we will look at what happens globally. And then I want to focus on the challenges experiencing teaching students at Al-Hekma, law students at Al-Hekma. I am the chair of law, and I was the chair during this move to online teaching during the lockdown. So it is imperative that we reflect on what has happened. So we must go forward now, and I want to underline the importance of careful planning in launching successful online learning in a legal education. So what would our next step be if we are not caught by surprise as we were under present circumstances? So when the lockdown was announced, it was a first for all of us. It came as a huge surprise. We didn't know what to expect. So we were instructed to complete the semester via online teaching. Now, most of my colleagues and myself have never done, we have done some blended learning, but we have never done online teaching. So we had very little prior experience, but still we were committed to make the best of the situation. There was very little time for planning, very little training. We were instructed to cover outstanding SLOs via Zoom. Now, that was, for me, it was the first time I heard about Zoom. In a few days' time, I was navigating Zoom with some measure of knowledge. So we had to cover the outstanding SLOs via Zoom, place recordings of our lectures on Blackboard. That was our mandate, and that was what we tried to cope with at the outset. Because remember, when this lockdown was introduced at Al-Hekma, we were right in the middle of doing midterm exams. So it didn't come at an ideal time for us. However, we managed to finish the semester with some success. I think a great deal of adaptability shown by my colleagues and by the students, but we have reached the time now for reflection. When we look at online teaching for law degrees, it is very important to establish, is there something unique about law? Is there something that makes law different from other disciplines? What makes legal education stand out? And that is what I will try to address. Legal education is and has always been very traditional. So law schools across the globe are sometimes very old, very well established, and they have a strong and old tradition of face-to-face teaching. Collectively, they have had very little, prior to COVID, very little experience with distance or online education. So when a number of years ago, the trend came to move to include some elements of online teaching, it came from pedagogical angles, from people telling us the technical advances you can achieve by incorporating online elements, and economics. How can you access a broader body of students? Now, of course, with the COVID, we were all forced to do it. So there was no luxury of thinking whether it suits us or not. That was the only way how we can reach our students. To understand law teaching a bit better, we need to know that lawyers do not have degrees in education. Legal scholars, law teachers are firstly legal scholars. They know about the law. So they are legal scholars who become teachers, not the other way around. And that is something unique about various professions, such as engineers or doctors. You don't train to teach medicine, you train to be a doctor. So pedagogical and technical knowledge often comes second to legal knowledge and scholarship. So what makes a good law teacher stand out traditionally has been their body of scholarship, how knowledgeable they are about the various technical aspects of the law, and not so much focus was placed on teaching. So when teaching young lawyers, acquiring knowledge through a classroom-based education is and has been for many years widely been considered as the best form of legal education. Legal education is focused on explaining rules, theories, different sources of law, engaging with how it can be applied, how it can be interpreted. It is very value-driven. And those are aspects that can be covered quite well in a traditional setup. Given that, there has been legitimate concerns regarding the quality of distance education, and that is why law schools were so slow and reluctant to move to online teaching. So the challenge we faced when we had to move to online teaching during lockdown, and that is something shared by law schools globally, was to provide distance education on par with traditional teaching. Now I know the potential, my eyes have been opened by the training I received, and I'm now aware that online teaching can offer much more. But because within a law context, the classroom was traditionally regarded as the ideal forum. The challenge was, how do we, without any technical knowledge, without teaching degrees, how do we duplicate to our students so that they don't lose out in their law degrees at this moving of platform that comes at a very late stage in the year. It was not something they were made aware of earlier in the academic year, as the same with us teachers. It is important to look at how law schools and legal professions internationally has catered for the distance learning and online elements. Now, the legal profession is in different countries governed by legal profession bodies. These bodies guard entry to the profession. So they tell us set criteria for who can practice as a lawyer. And one of the elements you need to practice as a lawyer is to have a law degree that meets certain requirements. So I have chosen two international examples with very old and reputable law schools to show us how things are done, and somewhere we need to find a practice that best suits our circumstances in our current environment. Now, looking firstly at law schools in the United States. Law schools are now increasingly contemplating launching online programs due to the technical advances and the economic exigencies that we are all faced with. The move, however, has started some years ago, but it has only been regarded as offering benefits for master's degrees, in other words, not for undergraduate students. As such, that has been very limited. And then for certain courses in a JD degree, so certain courses, electives as we call it, in the undergraduate degree. So full undergraduate on law programs are still considered contentious in the United States. And if you have one of those, the professional regulating body, the American Bar Association, would not recognize your degree. So you will not be able to practice as a lawyer in the United States with a fully online degree. And those rules were set because of concerns over quality. However, due to the pressures of online teaching being published, the benefits being published more widely, there has been pressure on the American Bar Association to include some distance learning components. And at the moment, it has been increased to doing 12 online credits. So you can do a face-to-face degree if you have 12 distance learning credits. You will still be permitted to enter the legal profession and become a practicing lawyer. In the UK, they do things a bit differently. There, the regulating body is called the Solicitors Regulation Authority, and they have quite a different approach to things. They require what we call a qualifying law degree. Now, that can be any degree. It doesn't need to be in law. And there are also no restrictions for online degrees. However, in the UK, we have very well established old and prestigious law schools that do offer law degrees. And in my opinion, if I need to advise a young student wanting to decide how to enter the law profession, I would advise them actually to go to a law school instead of doing a history degree and then going into law. A history degree online might also qualify as a qualifying law degree, but you would not have the undergraduate experience. So law schools, specifically in the UK, are also cautious to move to full online undergraduate courses, again more common at a master's level. And I have noted that there are currently debates whether online exams were at all permissible for law subjects during the COVID lockdown. Suggestions are made to postpone exams to a time when it can be done face-to-face rather than resort to the online option. So you can see there is widespread caution to jump into online courses under the pressure that we face at the moment. What can we learn from global practice? We've just referred to 2 countries, but I think that gives us a good idea of how legal education engages with online teaching. Why are there concerns over quality? We can argue that it doesn't really carry merit, but if you look at literature and statistics, it shows different countries, different numbers, but almost 90% of students enrolled for online law schools do not complete their degrees. Now, there are, of course, various other reasons. They might be more mature students who work during the day, who have pressures of work and family. So various reasons. It doesn't necessarily mean the law degree is inferior. However, it is more popular and widely accepted when it comes to master's programs. So when you have already an undergraduate degree entry that will enable you to enter into the profession. Certificate programs, they are very popular in a certain specialist area, and then also training for paralegals. Now, paralegals are lawyers, but they do not practice law. They do not qualify under the professional body to be able to practice law, but they engage with all kinds of other valuable legal employment. When coming to legal teaching, at the moment, globally, there are basically the 2 approaches, and we have touched on those approaches in our earlier workshops. It's really the synchronous and asynchronous approaches, and each of these have a specific package of challenges and benefits when it comes to legal education. We must assess these against the background of what I have just mentioned. So synchronous and asynchronous. If we look at synchronous, that doesn't seem as alien as many of these other new platforms that we are exposed to traditional law teachers, because it is simultaneous, but your participants are in different locations. So it is real time, it is interactive lectures, and it best parallels the traditional law school classroom. So it is quite obvious to see why this was embraced with some enthusiasm by law schools. However, those law schools who experimented with online teaching prior to COVID has identified certain good practices. And it shows that in-time and local technical assistance are often required. And that the teacher, him or herself, is not responsible to sort out technical problems while teaching, because that would distract from the quality, it would distract from the time used, and also from the student experience. So this is a team effort. A whole team needed to provide a really polished, professional online distance learning experience, and therefore the cost might often be higher than actual presentation of classes in the traditional setup. Also, another thing to reckon with, and it might be easier in some countries compared to others, is that students require adequate IT equipment. So they all need computers, they all need the same software, it must be maintained, it must be updated. They need to have good access to the internet. And another challenge is that the space the student uses to learn in has certain requirements during synchronous lessons. It must be distraction-free. So a student cannot necessarily sit in a busy office or sit on at home amongst the family. They need to listen, to speak, to interact without distractions. They need to have a live and reliable internet connection. And importantly, they must also not be a distraction to others. So libraries, traditional university setups where students learn together in an open environment is often not suited for that. So you need special designated areas if you want students to engage with synchronous learning. So to continue with some of the challenges, it's best to have a required and dedicated IT assistant in the same space. So normally teachers would be teaching online from office, so not from home. That is what we did prior to COVID. So connectivity problems and student access could be sorted out by having an IT specialist on hand. And it has been documented, in a number of papers have been written on the fact that faculty are ill-equipped, especially law faculty that spend their time studying legal problems. They are very ill ill-equipped to address technical concerns whilst conducting a class. And this I have also experienced during lockdown. And I have spoken to my colleagues that barely one class passed without somebody experiencing a technical glitch. And if you only have 1 hour, it takes up some of your time. So of course, the longer we go on with this, the better we become, but it would be better if there's somebody who can sort that out. Ms. Noura, you must just remind me of the time. I think I still have about 5 minutes.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. Then important to monitor clear outcomes and interactive activities. You need to spend more time designing interactive activities. Then a problem I experience and many of my colleagues experience is that it is difficult to maintain and monitor student attentiveness, especially if you can't see them, because in class you can see who's not understanding, who's following, when you should change your tone, when you should ask a question. So that has been a challenge to engage students where their cameras were not on and where they might quite possibly be engaged in another social media platform at the same time. Where in class I would say, put down your phone. You can't do that when you are online. Okay, now moving on to the asynchronous model. This is not real time and it's not live. So that gives you more flexibility. It gives you more accessibility, but then the design is more important. And here you can bring in another specialist to the team, people who have studied degrees on developing online teaching and how to facilitate interactive opportunities. So to summarize, let me just quickly go through the remaining slides. The international experience shows that it is a team expert. You have the content expert, the teacher, the instructional designer, and the IT tech person all working together to produce a successful online experience. Now coming to our DAR experience. Because of the urgency, we were required to present courses that were not originally designed for this, as I have already said. So pedagogically, the sessions planned were no different. We didn't plan it differently from what we planned our face-to-face sessions. We were all doing it from home with our technical expertise readily on hand in the same space. And then there was the assumption that we could do everything from home as we usually do face-to-face. And it was new to us, and it was a new experience working from our home offices, and it was not always readily fit for purpose. So those were factors that we had to account with. Looking at literature again, we can see that the most successful, financially successful courses often have to go through a trial run before going live. And it requires a whole team to develop a quality online experience. And then, given that it's not always cheaper than traditional modes of teaching. In conclusion, looking at our DAR experience, the newness of the medium for both students and faculty, coupled with the changing directives by the Ministry of Education, also trying to direct us in the best way they could, led to a lot of anxiety and compounded stress. Nevertheless, we made the best of the situation, and I think we managed to deliver a fairly or a very high degree of professional online teaching. There were a number of factors that we now need to think of very carefully when designing our way forward. We have had rapid just-in-time training on technical issues for online teaching, and I became confused with the various specialized features, alternative apps and platforms. And looking back, we should have given more attention to problems experienced by students also new to the medium. So we noticed that our grade distribution changed after online assessment, that students had ways to communicate with one another during open book texts, during assessments, that really we were not prepared for from the word go. So it was very much learning to drive a Formula One car from the onset rather than starting with a starter car. But nevertheless, we are all drivers now. Let me just see if I have, okay, let me quickly wrap up with this final slide. Here I point to the fact that further complicating factors working from home is that we do not all maintain the same office hours and so forth. So it was a lot of asynchronous time lags to get responses to things. But given all of this, how to go forward? We must look out at our special characteristics. We are an undergraduate law school. We offer summer courses, we offer short courses. So I would suggest that we embrace the new technology and plan how to enter into this market by presenting some really good and professional courses that can compete with our international contenders. It is a new market. And the maintenance of excellent and competitive standards are very important, and instead of just learning on the job. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Let me finish now, and if we still have some time for questions, I will be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Dr. Michelle. It was very insightful, and thank you for showing us the comparison between the UK and the US and how they are dealing with online degrees in law. We have two questions, if I may ask you please to answer them. We have a question from Dr. Jaffer. He's asking, can we have a court scene created online?
I think in principle you can. After the training that I went through, there are various ways that you can do it. And it's interesting to note that the legal profession in various countries now, because courts were closed due to this crisis, are conducting online court cases where you exchange your papers on electronically and you present your case through Zoom. So in principle, it can be done, but it is something quite tricky. And I would suggest that you get really in-depth, thorough training and support to do that. But it is definitely, it's a possibility.
Another question, please, Dr. Michelle. Dr. Linda Adra is asking, she's interested to know how you found the experience of having to merge the personal with the professional.
Well, I think that is something we can all comment on from our personal perspective. For me, it was not as difficult because I don't have children learning from home at the same time. But I found, and I'm sure I have spoken to colleagues, that I didn't have a work day. I didn't have a work week. It just went on and on and on. And that became very stressful, that you don't go home and you close the office door and you relax and you rest, and tomorrow you come with new enthusiasm and new ideas how to address problems. So worldwide, a lot of people are now talking about we should continue working from home, but I am a big fan of the office, besides missing all my colleagues. But there is a pool of know-how that I can just pop around the corner and ask questions instead of going through a formal email that she might be busy with her child at that stage. She might only answer my email tonight. I might have forgotten or thought about another solution in the meantime. So that is very challenging. And I think it is something all of us must reflect, and it will become apparent later what the cost and the compromises we were prepared to make during this lockdown.
Definitely. The last question, Dr. Khawla is asking, can we ever control cheating online or at least minimize it? I know of integrity management systems that can be integrated with the Blackboard, with the learning management systems that we have, and they are based on mentoring as well as artificial intelligence. So Dr. Khawla, you can actually manage the sound in the background. If the student moves left or right, you can, of course, the camera should be on and everything is recorded. But the AI automatically generates a report, an integrity report, and says the level of suspicion, if any. Some of these softwares is Proctorio that is being used widely now for exams. Dr. Michelle, would you like to add on this, please?
No, thank you, Ms. Nura. Well, just very shortly, I think you gave a very good response that increasingly we are seeing different ways how to manage it. What we did find from our results was that students who were rigorous, serious students, normally our best students, who didn't communicate with others, their marks were not as good as some others who might have used different ways of communicating with one another. So it is very challenging. We tell them all the time, you must communicate with one another, you must peer learn, you must talk to one another. We are all in this together, we are connected, but when it comes to doing a test, it is open book, which is new to them, but again, then you shouldn't talk to anybody. So it's new boundaries, I think, that we need to create, and we need to establish a culture of non-cheating.
Thank you, Dr. Michelle.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for for sharing your experience with us and with our guests today. The next speaker is myself, Noura Al-Jundi. I'm a lecturer at Al-Hekma University, the business school. I will share, I hold an MBA from the American University of Beirut and a Master's of Digital Age Learning from Johns Hopkins University. I will share with you my experience in one of the courses, the International Business Management course. It will be very brief, just for you to have an idea about what we can do online and how we actually were part of some online virtual projects before the COVID and before the lockdown. Distance learning in business education. Okay. The screen is, can you see the screen? Yes. Our ultimate goal, of course, when we teach at the business school is to, as business educators, the ultimate goal is to prepare our business graduates to join the workplace. When we think of the textbooks that we have to let them go through, of the presentations that we prepare, if all of this does not add value and translate to their performance in the workplace, we did not achieve the goal. So preparing our graduates to join the workplace, be different when joining the workplace, is something that we always strive for at the Al-Hekma Business School. The most recent studies show that career readiness, what actually people in the workforce are looking for in business graduates, this is what they point at, and this is what they test most of the people who apply to their vacancies for: oral written communication skills, critical thinking, problem solving, collaborating, teamwork, professionalism, work ethics, global, intercultural fluency, creativity, imagination, career management, which also might be considered as self-discipline, digital technology, and leadership. So these are requirements that the workforce today checks in the readiness of the students once they want to join their workforce. Trends in remote work growth, and this was before COVID, so definitely the numbers are increasing after COVID. A lot of the work that will be done remotely, meaning that I have to prepare my graduates to work remotely as well, and to emphasize the skills that they need while working remotely. Because so many, as also Dr. Michelle identified, after experience, we see that there is value in that. So as a lot of us saw that there is value in this, many businesses will actually move remotely. If my students are not ready to work remotely, then they are losing some of the advantages or opportunities that they have. A case study that I will discuss with you is my experience with my students in teaching international business management at Al-Hekma. Now, how can you teach any student international business from a textbook? How would a student experience international business? If you just give them a textbook and I ask them to read, I'll sit there and lecture. Okay, they will read case studies, but they did not experience international business. You did not give them a chance to experience international business. In Al-Hekma, actually, we are strong believers of experiential learning. Experiential learning means that whatever, in simple terms, of course, whatever experience you pass through will predict whatever, how you will act, and then so on. So experience predicts action and is continuously developed. When you experience something in the past, automatically the way you react in the future will depend on your previous experience. And this is what happens if I try to engage my students today in virtual collaboration teams, because they will know how to work in global collaborative teams or virtual collaborative teams, and this will give them a skill. Once they go out to the workforce and they are faced with a similar situation, they will know how to act. David Kolb's experiential theory also says that based on solid experience, I can observe, reflect on my experience, learn from it, conceptualize, and then experiment, and so on. This is the continuing cycle of experiential learning. This is what we try to do in teaching the students international business. How would you give your students a great experiential learning experience? Through project-based learning or inquiry-based learning, or maybe problem-based learning. And interestingly enough, all of these theories were there before COVID and before we get into this emergency online learning. Nevertheless, being in an online learning environment today, you can still practice the three theories. You have options where you can use and fulfill project-based learning, inquiry-based learning, or problem-based learning. As an example, we have supply chain management simulation games. We have digital marketing simulation games that we use and we used even before. Inquiry-based learning, there are field trips through Google Expeditions where you can take a student through a certain trip and they start asking questions. Finally, the project-based learning, the example on that is the X Culture Global Project that I'll take you through now in details. What happened? Dr. Vasil Taras, who was an associate professor at the Department of Management in the University of North Carolina, was teaching his students international business in 2010. He realized that the students are very bored. They're not learning as much as they should be. So he thought, what can I do to help students experience and enjoy learning international business? He thought to himself, maybe I should contact other professors in other universities who are teaching international business from different countries, different cultures, and then join the students together. Maybe this will help them learn what international business is about. Collaboration, communication, communicating with different cultures, being flexible, adaptable, learning or working in different time zones. They wanted the students to experience this. And this is what happened. He approached the International Business Management Association in the US. He sent an email and he got so many requests with other professors who were very interested to actually make the students collaborate together during the same semester on a real business challenge. By real business challenge, we invite different companies at the beginning of the semester. They have a challenge and then they present webinars to our students, and then the students go ahead and work on this real business problem and solve the challenge. So imagine these concepts of international business: entry modes, economic, socioeconomic forces, international competitive strategy, assessing, analyzing markets. When you do these theoretically without experiencing them, they do not resonate and stay in your mind as much. But when you ask your students to actually work on a real project where there is a company who is telling you, I have a problem, I want to explore a new market, where do I go to and how? And then I have a group of students in my own team. Each one of us is from a different culture. One is from the US, one is from China, the other from Canada, one from Saudi Arabia. We all are exposed to different cultures, different business environments. Together, we share our ideas, and then we come up with something that everyone can benefit from, especially the companies themselves. The process, what happens? The students receive a training material and take the readiness test. What happens is the instructor, I go at the beginning of semester, I register my students, I say I contact the X Culture and I tell them that I have 20 students who are registered in the course. I'd like them to join the X Culture project. They allocate them in different teams. Each one of them is in a different team working with a diversified group on a business challenge. They have a detailed performance data, which is collected on weekly basis. The peers, the students in one group evaluate one another. We have weekly progress reports that are sent out to the instructors. And then towards the end, the final reports are evaluated according to a shared rubric by all the instructors. So if I have 20 students, I have to evaluate 20 final reports. And this one report for one of my students will be evaluated by the other 5 instructors from different universities worldwide. And that's why it's a great learning experience for everyone, because the students are not only evaluated by their instructor, and they are not working with their own classmates. What happened to the Dr. Naaman is asking, was making the rubric difficult? Dr. Naaman, the rubric is set by the X Culture and they provide you with it because there's a different rubric for every company. The company that your students select to work on will have its own rubric. The number of students in 2010 was less than 500. And now recently in the fall semester of 2020, the X-Culture had around 5,000 students. So you can see how successful the model is. And every time once you join with a class, you want to join the other class because it's a great learning experience for the students. They started with 125 teams. They are more than 1,000 teams today, usually in the X-Culture brand. They have one in fall, the other in spring. Universities, they started with 7, today more than 100, around 132 universities from across the globe. Alhamdulillah, we're still the only ones from Saudi Arabia. Countries, 7 countries reached up to 65. So participants are from 65 different backgrounds. The experience that the students gain throughout this project is cross-cultural communication, problem solving in teams, leadership, because what happens is that every student in her own team, they have to together decide who's going to be the leader. Online collaboration tools, they have to be exposed to what's going on. A very interesting learning experiences. One of the groups that we had was, Miss, they don't use WhatsApp. They don't know what WhatsApp is. For us, WhatsApp is very essential, and so on and so forth. The art of writing winning business proposals, plagiarism, academic referencing, and then the basics of international business. Another thing, our students were very surprised to see that everyone outside works. All the students would have a job, maybe even 2, as part-time inside the bookstore of the university, outside in a restaurant, and so on. They were very surprised to say, oh my God, they're students and they have 2 part-time jobs to earn their living. So they really get exposed and see how this affects building their personality and developing their personality. By doing this through the X-Culture project, we have emphasized the technology standards in our students, empowered learner, they became knowledge constructors, computational thinkers, creative communicators, collaborators, and digital citizens. I emphasize this again in today's presentation because if we do not prepare them for a world that speaks technology, we are not doing our job correctly. Because no matter how much we like it or not, they will have to be living, working, prospering in a technological friendly environment. And that's why we have to always fetch for opportunities for them to focus on that. Thank you very much for your time and your attention. I am ready to answer any questions regarding the X-Culture or my experience in teaching online. Okay, we have a question here. Dr. Khawla, do you think the class size makes a difference in a teacher managing an online class based on experiential learning? Definitely, Dr. Khawla, it does make a difference, but you can always use the concept of the breakout rooms and dividing them into smaller groups, as well as you can try to give more of a flipped classroom. They prepare before coming into class. You give them something that they can watch or read before coming into class. Maybe this will facilitate the engagement. A challenge, Dr. Nu'man, the idea of this competition or global project is not it's not one challenge or one project for all the DAH students. Every student in Dar Al-Hekma joined a different group, and each group picked a different challenge of a company. What's interesting is that the companies even that the students deal with are very new. They're in the new industries such as vertical farming or technology apps, developing technology apps, marketing for technology apps, Some companies have very successful business models in different countries, but they do not succeed in our countries. And this is the exposure. You can find all the information on the website of the X Culture, including the names of our students. Alhamdulillah, twice our students made it to the top 10%. And towards the end, usually in the summer of every year, they do invite the participants to a symposium. This year, the symposium was online due to COVID. And because the project has proved to be very successful in higher education, they actually launched a version for schools. So now you have X Culture for teens. From the age of 13 to the age of 18 years old, they also have challenges and business challenges. They have people who come and present. They take their input, they work on their projects, and it's also an opportunity if you have younger children that you want to engage them in such an explorative experience. Thank you very much. Next, we will have Dr. Shaima, unless, if you have any questions from me, please. If not, we will start with our third guest today, Dr. Shaima Masri. Dr. Shaima holds a PhD in computational finance from the School of Computer Science in the University of Essex in the UK. Dr. Shaima has several conference and journal publications, among which two are in the Journal of Quantitative Finance by Taylor and Francis. Dr. Shaima has been awarded the David Norman Prize for developing a double auction simulator. Her research interests are in business intelligence, computational finance, data warehousing, and data mining. Thank you, Dr. Shaima, for joining us today. I will stop sharing my slides so you can kindly start your presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Noor, for your introduction. And also thank you very much for sharing your lovely experience with us. It's very insightful. And thanks to Dr. Michel for the very informative presentation. I would also like to welcome all the audience attending the webinar today. So I hope you can see the presentation. Is it visible for you?
Yes, Dr. Shaima, thank you very much.
Okay, today I will talk about learning analytics and how it become very important nowadays, especially after the big shift of online learning. Then I will give you a brief introduction about learning analytics and how it's applied, or it has been applied in Blackboard. Okay. When you hear the word analytics or read the word analytics, the first thing that comes to your mind is analyzing data. And what kind of data are we talking about here? It's actually big data. And as many of you already know, that big data is now a dictum, which currently seems to be on everyone's lips. It has recently developed into one of the most discussed topics in research and practice. Millions of gigabytes of data travel through networks, the World Wide Web, and reside in the various data storage devices every day. There are various sources of data. These can be social media data, medical data, financial data, stock exchange market data, you name it. So all this data requires the development of powerful tools to discover valuable information by transforming it into organized knowledge. Now, we have also our own big data in the educational field, especially when it comes to talking about digital learning environments. Digital learning environments, they generate mountains of data. The list is very long. I have just included some examples here. In an LMS, you can have data about the course calendar, about the course contents, about student profiles, about course messages, about blogs, about students' attendance, about quizzes, about surveys, polls, discussion boards, student completion status, course announcements, course assignments, rubrics, students' engagement. Okay, so as you can see, lots of data can be generated by our digital learning environment. Here comes the role of learning analytics. So what can we do with this data? We need to analyze it. So this is why we call it learning analytics. Learning analytics is the measurement, collection, analysis, and reporting of data about learners and their context for purposes of understanding and optimizing learning and the environment in which this learning occurs. So what's the potential benefit of learning analytics? As a matter of fact, all the stakeholders in the educational field can benefit from learning analytics. If you are an instructor, you can track your students' engagement. For instance, the number of times they access your course, the number of times they submit their tasks, the extent to which they meet the deadlines, the level of their interaction, their performance. Okay, you can also track the students' performance in terms of grading, in terms of finishing on time, in terms of finishing discussion forums, or actually contributing in discussion forums or blogs, whatever. So it depends on your performance rubrics. You can also analyze each student's performance against the average class performance. And also as an instructor, you can detect students at risk. And with students at risk, I mean students who have been missing some deadlines, who are late in their submissions, who have low grading level, who have low level of interaction in the course content. If you are a student, you can also view your personal engagement in the course as compared to your classmates. Okay, you can also have a picture about your personal performance as compared to the class average. And also you will get at-risk alerts that are being sent by the system to you, again, for missing deadlines or submissions, for low grading level, for low interaction level. And also you will get a recommended action report that will be sent to you by your instructor, telling you how you can improve yourself in the course. If you are a decision maker, let's say you're a head of department, you're a school dean, or even you are a university president, you can also benefit a lot from learning analytics. You can view students' engagements across the different courses in each department, or across the different departments, or across the different colleges in the university. You can also view students' performance trend across the different departments and across the different colleges. Also, you can identify what instructional design practices lead to improved student performance. You all know that we as instructors, we use different teaching methods. Each instructor can use different activities, different tools, like maybe blogs, discussion forums, assignments, group wikis, group projects, whatever you are using. So if the data shows that your course has high level of involvement or high level of engagement, if it shows that it has a high level of performance, then your teaching strategy or your course design seems to be having a positive impact on your students. Finally, you can also find out which tools are being used in which courses the most and which are the least. Also, the government can benefit from learning analytics. If we assume that all the universities use the same learning system or digital learning system in the country, and if the government has access to the learning analytics of this system, then they can compare the performance of the different universities and evaluate the most effective strategies. Now, what about Dar Al-Hekma? Can we have learning analytics? Yes, we can. Actually, there are three options. The first option is having an in-house developed system. And by in-house developed system, I mean that we develop our own system or our own software. We will join the data that's being generated by our Blackboard. We will take it and we will join it by the data generated by our student information system. Maybe we can also join it with any other system, with any other needed system. We can joining the data, then we can build a big data warehouse then we can use our own analytical tools, maybe OLAP tools, maybe also some data mining techniques to generate this kind of reports. Is this an easy task? Of course it's not. It requires very skilled IT staff. But I think it could be a potential idea for capstone projects, especially for our computer science students or even for our master students. And in that case, it will not be only one project. It can be divided into several projects that combines in the end into one big whole system. The second option is that we use the current tools that we already have in Dar Al-Hekma Blackboard. It's not a complete analytic platform, but still we have some tools that can give us some indicators of how we are progressing in our course. And finally, we can have a license or apply the Blackboard analytics. So what I will do now, I will show you how we can use our current tools that we have in Dar Al-Hekma. It will be just a brief introduction. And then I will show you the potential of Blackboard analytics. Now, if you log into your Blackboard account, as I'm logged in here, you will, if you go to the left panel, under course management, you will find something called evaluation, a link called evaluation. Under evaluation, you will find course report, performance dashboard, retention center, okay? If you click on the course report, you will find a long list of reports that you can generate for your course. Of course, I will not go through all courses, but I will give you just 2 examples. But it would be really nice if you devote some time for these reports. It will be, you can make use of it. The first one is all user activity inside content area. Now, in this report, I need to see how many students have been using the different content areas that I have created for this course. In my example here, for instance, I have the information content area. I have a content area for the lectures contents, for discussions, for assignments, and for quizzes. If you click on this report, it will give you the option of choosing the start date and the ending date, and it will also show you the number of users for which you want to generate this report. In my case here, I will select all students. Now, this is the report that's being generated. By the way, this is a very long report. It's in a PDF format, but I just took a small snapshot from it. As you can see here, it shows a pie chart of all user activity inside the different content areas. You have here the assignments, information, lecture contents, and quizzes. And as you can see, the assignments have 165 hits, whereas the lecture contents have almost 600 hits. So this is a very good indicator for you that tells you to what extent are your students accessing the course contents or accessing the different content areas in your course. Another useful report is the second one, which is my second example, is the course activity overview. So this will give you a summary of the different activities that you have in your course and the amount of time spent by the students in the different activities. So if you run this report, you will see something like that. So this is the course name, the course ID, the number of students enrolled in this course. This is the course overview. It shows you the number of hours spent on each weekday by the students. Okay, so as you can see here, there is a nice pattern or a nice trend that most of the students spend most of the time on the Blackboard in this course. In my case, it's the enterprise architecture on Saturday in the weekend and also on Sunday. And here it shows you the different students and the amount of time they are spending in this course for the different activities. If you want to have a detailed report for each student, you can just click on one of the bars here, this bar graph, and it will give you the following detailed report. So my student here is called Rana, for instance. She has here, this is her activity level or the amount of hours she's spending on the different activities. As you can see here, she's spending most of the time on Saturday and on Wednesday. And here it shows you the number of hours spent for each activity. Okay. Another useful report that you also can use in your Blackboard is called Retention Center. It's under the evaluation link here, as you can see. Now the Retention Center, it's generated automatically. It will show you the students who are at risk. So they might have missed some deadlines, they might have not submitted, they might have a low level of interaction, they might have a low grading level relative to their classmates, okay? So as you can see here, these, for instance, these all students, they have missed a deadline. So the 11 of them, they missed the deadline. If I want to see the details, I can click on the first student here, sorry, and it will show you that one deadline has been missed by this student, or actually she has missed 2 deadlines. And for this, you can send her a notification. So you just send, you click on this button, notify, to tell her that she needs to meet the deadline, or she needs to submit her late tasks. And you can also put this student on monitor to see how she or he is progressing. And once you put it on monitor, it will appear here like this student here, and it will show you the last axis, her activity level relative to the average class mates, her grade relative to the average classmates, etc., and the number of missed deadlines. Okay, so this is just a brief for some tools that you can already use in your Blackboard account. Now, what if we have Blackboard Analytics? Now, again, I will not show you all the reports because it's a huge platform. I will just give you some examples to give you a flavor of how it can look like if you have Blackboard Analytics. If you are an instructor, you can generate a report called Course at a Glance. In this report, as you can see here, this is the instructor name, the course ID that it's being told by the instructor, and it shows different charts. The first chart, I'm sorry, the resolution is not very good because of it's a snapshot of the system. So the first chart shows the number of course accesses. In other words, the number of times students have access to your course relative to other courses in the same department. So you can see how your course is progressing relative to other courses in the same department. The second chart shows the amount of time being spent in your course by your students relative to other courses in the same department. The third one shows the level of interaction, again, relative to other courses in the same department. The final one shows the level of submissions. A very interesting information is also provided in this report is historical information on the same course, on the level of interaction in the same course in previous semesters. So this can give you an indicator of how well you are progressing in this course. Maybe you might be lacking something because of the low interaction level of your students, or maybe you are doing well because you have been exceeding previous levels in previous semesters. Okay, if you are a student, you can have a report like this one. Of course, as a student, you can have several reports. This is just one example. So here, this is the picture of the student ID, the major, the college, etc. And here he can or she can see the number of logins versus the average number of logins of his classmates or her classmates. In this case, it's a male student. The number of interactions versus or as compared to his classmates, okay? Also the number of submissions relative to the average number of submissions, and finally the amount of time spent in this course relative to his classmates. So again, this is a very good indicator for the student because he can monitor his own performance or his own engagement in the course, and he will have his own KPIs, as we say, to he might need to devote more time on the course. Maybe he will see that he's doing well in the course, etc. Okay. Another report that can be useful also for instructors and as well as for decision makers is the student risk report. As you can see here, this is very similar to the retention center that I just showed you. It gives you a summary of students at risk, those students who might be at high risk. So we have here, for instance, 5 students at risk, those who are have low risk, and those who are at medium risk. Okay, and in that case, you will send notification to the different students, telling them what's the recommended actions to improve their status or to overcome this risk level. The last example, which I find really interesting, It's for decision makers, especially for school deans, or maybe also for head of department school deans, or even the university president, is that you can monitor all courses across the different departments and across the different colleges. So as you can see here, you're choosing here, for instance, the term spring 2011, you're choosing here your category to be all colleges. And here you can see the learning activity across the different colleges. The number of course logins, average logins, the time being spent for all courses in each college, the number of students enrolled. In the second chart here, you can see the number of logins for each college, or the number of logins to the different activities for the different courses in each college. Okay, here you can view the number of student accesses to the different courses across the different departments, as you can see here. Here you have a table, another table shows the top 10 most active courses. Okay, and this would be a really nice indicator for knowing which department maybe to reward, or which course instructor to reward for having a good teaching strategy, or for having a high level of interaction in his or her course. Okay, you might, these are my examples for the Blackboard Analytics, but again, the list is very long. This is just a snapshot of some example reports, but if you are interested, you can log into or actually you can access the Blackboard website, and you can go to the Blackboard Analytics and have a view about the different Blackboard reports that you can have. Now, you might say as an instructor that this might be an extra load for the instructor to generate all these reports and to have to analyze these reports. But again, you can have your own strategy for accessing or for generating these reports. One of these strategies was suggested by the Teaching and Learning Conference by Blackboard, organized by Blackboard in 2016 in Sydney. They were suggesting the following. At the start of the semester, let's say by end of week 1, you can identify students who have not logged in yet. So in this case, you can generate the report called Unit at a Glance report. And then there will be an action required from your side. So you will contact the students who have not yet accessed the system to make sure that everyone is on track with you. By the end of week 3, you need to identify students with low interaction level. So for that, you can generate what we call the activity matrix report. And the action required from your side will be to contact students with low interaction level. After each assessment, you can identify students with concerning outcomes. So for that, you can create what we call the activity and grade scatter plot. And here you can contact your students and giving them recommendations for how they can improve their grades, or for which topics they need to focus more, or anything recommended from your side. By the end of the semester, you can review your course design and see which tools have been most impactful on the students. So you can generate what we call the unit submission summary, and here you will review the unit design and all the resources that you have used, or tools that you have used in your course. One last thing that I would like to recommend, or I would like to urge you to read for Blackboard Analytics, is an article that has been also published by Blackboard. It's about how 7 higher education institutions in the Middle East region use analytics to improve institutional performance and student success. And by the way, 2 of these institutions are from Saudi Arabia. It's King Abdulaziz University and Saudi Electronic University. They have used Blackboard Learning Analytics, and they're discussing in this article the challenges that they have faced and the opportunities that they could take from this learning analytics platform. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention, and you're most welcome for any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shema. It's really very, very helpful, and many comments in the chat are saying that they did not know that all of this existed in Blackboard. Dr. Naaman is asking, can we have the analytics simplified and easier to investigate or navigate?
Actually, the analytics platform is, Dr. Naman, if you mean for the Blackboard analytics, we must have the license for it, and you don't have to generate all the reports. You will have some sort of setup. You can create your own dashboard as an instructor or as a student. So these reports will be created automatically. It's like a push report for in each section of your dashboard. If we're talking about the current tools that we have, no, actually, it's you just need to click on each course report. You need to define the time period, the students that you want to for which you want to generate the report, and this is the only way to access it. I hope I answered your question, Dr. Naman.
Thank you, Dr. Shaima. If any other question? Yes, great. Such reports definitely are very useful in decision making. As you said, it is big data that we need to really make use of. I don't think we are, many of us are not aware that we can make so many reports or generate a lot of useful information from Blackboard. It's something that we already have. Dr. Shaima, if I may ask you, how easy it is to get started on these reports? Is it the same way that you did? We just go on, we click.
Yes, yes, exactly.
It's that simple.
Yes, the same exactly steps. So it's very easy.
It would help us in generating some information with respect to the course report that we do at the end of every year.
Yes, exactly. Very true.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shaima. Any other questions from our guests? They're all telling you thank you very much. It was really very informative. I think each one of us will go and try to explore with Blackboard and maybe send you some questions by email, Dr. Shaima.
It would be my pleasure, Ms. Noor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any alignment of PLOs and SLOs? Dr. Azza is asking. Any alignment? Thank you, Dr. Shaima, mostly for usage, but any alignment of PLOs and SLOs? Dr. Azza, can you unmute yourself and explain this further, please?
I think I understand the question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shaima, but most of the analytics that you presented are to track the students' usage and actually to analyze if our teaching methodology or our assessment tools are actually, they are getting some good results. But all these, we use them for ourselves. Actually, when we need to get some information for what we really are supposed to submit, which are the course file and the course report, we are actually in need of PLOs and SLOs alignment with all our exams, quizzes, assignments, submitted. And these are, I think, the most important. And yes, I do understand that the reports are important for following up the students, but for our own, again, assessment of the achievement of the SLOs and PLOs, I think we need these from Blackboard somehow. Or if we can do that internally, like you and any other, professors we have who are into statistics, we need your help in this. It is something that we are missing, and we have to do something about it.
Yes, Dr. Azza, I totally understand what you were asking about from once I read your question. Actually, there is an option called course goals. And in this option, you can identify the goals. In our case, it will be the SLOs. And then you will align each SLO with the different tasks. And then you will have a report. Actually, one of the reports here, I don't know if you can see still my screen. It's called...
yes, we can, Doctor.
Yes, it was called, okay, it's not here in the screenshot, but it's called course goals. So it will show you, the report will show you to what extent each goal has been achieved by the different tasks. And this would be very useful for us for using for aligning our student learning outcomes. But again, what I wanted to emphasize here in this presentation is that it's of course the SLOs are very important, and this is our heavy task at the end of each year, at the end of each term. But again, it's very important also to be able to predict the retention of your students, the retention rate of your students. It's important to know to what level your students are satisfied, or to what level they have really benefited from this course. So you might have a survey for the students, and it will not be as accurate as really witnessing their level of interaction, their performance level, their level of engagement through the Blackboard or through the learning analytics system. And if you would like, the doctor, I would send you a link for how to use the course goals or actually for how to generate the report of the course goals.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Shema.
Thank you very much, Dr. Az.
Yes, please, Dr. Shema, if you can send this link to
yes,
all
I
of
will
us.
do that. I will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Noor.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shema, for this insightful presentation. We have with us next Dr. Naaman Bantan, who is an assistant professor, 22 years of professional experience and 10 years of university teaching. Areas of expertise are process mapping and engineering, data analysis, ROI, networking, and teaching. The research interests of Dr. Naaman are big data, business modeling, risk analysis, and project management. Dr. Naaman, thank you for being with us here today. Dr. Shema, can you stop sharing your screen, please? Okay, excellent. Dr. Naaman, you can go ahead, please. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil mursalin Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. I believe you can see the presentation now, right?
Yes.
Okay. So data correlation analysis. I just want to jump into the topic right away. Thanks for the presentation from the previous professors. There was all of you were fantastic. So when we say, I just want to give you a brief of what is data correlation mean. Okay, so data itself by itself is nothing of actually meaningless information. Like if we talk about the Makkah population has 8 million people. Okay, this is census in 2018. Okay, it's no value. The number itself has no value. So what we do a correlation, where we find a relationship between two factors. So if we bring the factors, like let's say the number of population and the number of restaurants in 2016 is 5,187. Now we can somehow relate to what is the population with the number of restaurants. Then we make it a little more interesting, and by defining the word correlation analysis. The word data correlation analysis is a study of finding the relationship string between one number to another number. Like for example, if you look here in the data, you see Mecca population, this is talking Mecca province, 8 million, Medina 2 million, Riyadh 8 million. The number of restaurants, it's not the same. Like see, the population between Mecca and Riyadh is almost the same, but there is a big difference. Area, there is 150. The area of Mecca is far smaller than the area of Riyadh, but still we have more people living in Mecca. Number of universities. So all these numbers, what do they make sense? We have to find somehow to connect the two numbers together. See, like we have 23 universities in Mecca area, Medina 7. So really we have to dig deep and find out exactly what do we mean by data? What do we mean by how to data communicate with each other or how they correlate? So my presentation requires some little understanding of three terms. One of them is called the average or mean, or something called variance and standard deviation. I know math maybe is not the best friend for many people, but I try to make it from a business point of view So the average, the mean is very simple, as all you know it. So we have this data, 1, 1, 5, 6, 7. We add them together, it gives us 20. The average is 4. But we will use the word mean now, actually, for the rest. So the mean from this data set is 4. Okay, then we go to the variance. Variance, like people think of it as a very difficult term. Actually, it's a very easy term. It's the average of how far away the number from the mean. Okay, so so the mean here is 4, and we want to find out exactly how it is the average difference between this 4 with each one of these numbers. So the calculation is very simple. You subtract the number itself, which is a 1, minus the 4, minus the mean, and you power it, and you add them all together, and you divide it by the number of people, number of items. So if this is the calculation, 3 squared, 3 squared, 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared, and we get to the number, which is 6.4. So this is variance, it is a squared item, but what we really mean is something called standard deviation. I'm not gonna go into what standard deviation, but standard deviation is 2.83, which means that this 2.83 is, if you look at each one of these numbers, there is a difference between 2.83 between each one to the others. Okay, let's park it here. Okay, so this standard deviation is the average difference between all these numbers. Okay, all right, we can go back to it if you want later on. Okay, so I'm gonna come here and see what if we want to compare. Okay, when we do in business or we do everything, we want to compare 2 factors only. Okay, so what to compare? So in this example, we say, okay, income, monthly wages, 10,000 riyals, and it grows all the way to 20,000 riyals, 22. So the average spending is this numbers, okay? So these numbers are made up. So as you see here, as your wages grow, your spending is also growing. But also there is another contrast we want to find out. If your average wages also grow, how many cars do you have? So we did the survey and we found out exactly how people who make 10,000 riyals, they have 3 cars, 11,000 3 cars. So the numbers, but doesn't really make sense here because people who are making 20,000, they have 1 car. So we want to see this in real life. What does this look like? How can this look like actually in a graph? So we have something that's called scatter plots. So you see here, actually this looks a very nice graph because you see, so there is this graph is going in the middle. It doesn't mean growing, by the way, it means it's aligning. So these numbers at the bottom, which is the 9,000, 11,000, 13,000, all the way to 22,000, is growing, is aligning with the spending, okay? So there is a straight line almost that you can see here. But when you talk about the number of cars, it's really doesn't align. There is nothing, we cannot make sense of it, okay? So this is really confusing. So we need to find some kind of relationship. How can we make a relationship between 2 factors? So we have something correlation coefficient. This correlation coefficient lies between -1 and +1. A positive number, which is a positive relation, means increase one factor, increase in the other. As we said, increase in one side, it increases in the other side, and we have this relationship. And also we have a negative relationship, which means increase in one area, decrease in another area, okay? So this is somehow, it gives us an indicator, what is the reasoning behind one activity, okay? I'm gonna go a little more deeper into this, okay? So if I have something like this, this means nothing to me. So this gives me no relationship. So I cannot base a decision based on this graph or based on these numbers. But I can make a decision based on a graph that tells me that there is a relationship. So this is for you ladies, okay? So married women control of the house, by the age, okay, I see that, women have full control of the house by the age when they reach 90. And as you see here, it grows up and down, okay? Unfortunately for us men, it's the other way around, okay? We lose our minds when we get married, you know, by the age 25. We have full capacity of 80. Then suddenly we lose until we reach to 90 and done, nothing. We are out of the picture, okay? Okay, so this is just a reminder of what happens here, okay? So this is the plus relationship and this is a negative relationship. Okay, so I'm gonna give you an example. Then I'm gonna go, after this example, I'm gonna show you actually a business model and what we're gonna do from a university perspective and from the business life, okay? So we have, okay, I'm just gonna do some math here. It's very straightforward, believe me, it's so easy. Okay, so we have these numbers 1, 1, 5, 6, 7, and we have the same number. So we're gonna try to find out if this relationship is gonna be perfect. So these are the numbers 1, 1, 1, 5, 6, 7. Okay, the mean, as we from the previous graphs, we found it's 4. So if we put 4 here, and then the standard deviation is 2.83. So we create a new value for each one of these items. What is the value is, we take the value, which is the 1, minus the mean, which is the 4, and we divide it by the SD, which is 2.83. And we have these new numbers here. So these are new numbers, okay, that we are calculating. You'll see why these numbers are very beneficial to us. So what do? We multiply these new numbers, the new numbers, with each other, okay, from A and B, each one of them. So we get this number, 1 plus 1.41. And we do the same for each one of these items. And then we add them together and we divide by the number. So we get an average of 1. That's it. That's so simple. So now we have this graph. So now we have a perfect relation between this data and this data. Okay. I believe now you are with me on understanding what we're talking about when we have relationship, okay, or correlation. So this is just an example, very with no value, just numbers A and B. So let's take it more real. So we have a few examples that are going to tackle each one of the situations. So we have here students, and these are the ages. Okay, these are sample from, you know, from my previous classes I have. So 18, 18, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 29, 29, 32, and this is the GPA. Okay, so I don't want to show you, it's a big number, it's a big data, okay? So I'm looking here at this graph. So I'm plotting this scatter plot, and I'm seeing there is nothing here. I don't see any kind of relationship between age and the GPA. I see it's almost flat line. So after I did all the calculation, I found the mean, which is 3.68 for the GPA, and the student age 24. Standard deviation 3.54. But the coefficient actually is very close to 0. So really, I cannot make a decision on, you know, how good the students are because of their age. So maybe I have to find another statistics. I have to find other factors to look at. So I looked into absences. So I went back to the same data, and I found out that the absences of each one of my students, and I found their GPA. No, forget this slide. Oh, now we have something. So I am looking at, for people with 0% of absences are getting actually very high GPA. And I have other, so as the absences increases to 50%, people are getting actually in the 2s and the 1s. These people, you know, for some chances, they had some difficulties, but they're good students, but they couldn't come to class for some reason. So they were here, they maintained a good GPA. But the norm that you can see here, that you can base a decision on this, okay, is that as the more students get absence, the lower the grades. So this is the example we're talking about, you know, from the student's perspective, okay. I am a businessman actually, so I am a teacher, at the same time I'm a businessman. So I like to do business reading. So I looked at the business class price from Jeddah to Dubai. And when airlines, there is FlyNAS, there is whatever, Fly Deal, Saudi Airlines, Fly Dubai, so when they reduce their prices, to 3,000, between 3,000 to 4,000, the occupancy of the flight becomes 100%. But when the number decreases, okay, so when the price of the ticket increases to 4,500, there is a big gap here. So people are reluctant to buy tickets now. Okay, so the business people, the business mind, they have to look at this data and make a decision. Do we really need to be here, or do we need to be here? So as you see here, the number of business classes, okay, the occupancy becomes less and less and less. So I have to look at other data as well. So I'm looking at the seats per occupancy. So if I have only, sometimes you see smaller airplanes, they have only 2 seats in the business class. And usually they're sold, okay? So the number of occupants, the number of seats increases, but actually the number of occupancy is also decreases. These are situations here. Well, for this one, maybe there was an occasion, there was something happening in Dubai that needed that, so they got full occupancy because of this data. So we really look at this and we have to, what can we do to do a mixing? So this prepares me for something else. So I'm going to exit out of this presentation, and I'm going to go to an Excel sheet that I'm teaching right now in strategic planning. So I'm going to stop sharing. Where is my sharing? Okay, I'm going to share with you. Oh, okay, here we go. Okay. So in this class, we're talking about pricing. So we have the number of seats, okay? So in this business seats, I have 40 seats and I have 200 economy. And then I have the number of, do you see all the present Excel sheet, correct? Right? Okay, now I cannot see.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So and this is the number of seats for the business class, and this is the prices. And I have collected some data, for prices, okay? But this is another airline. This is an American airline. So the base price, okay, is the cost price for the airline is $80. And also the cost price for the business is $150. This is between 2 small cities in the US. And so if they sell less than 150, they will lose money. If they sell the column less than 180, then $80, they will lose money. But the price cap that was set by the administration is 140 and 30. So you see here, this number is the profit without any kind of discounts. Okay. So we want to find out okay. So if I put here 140 and I put 300, so there is the number here. So now I have to decrease the number of my airline, okay, my price, in order to reach that level of maximum profit. Okay, so maybe if I go to 290, I'm getting more revenue now, because there is a probability of me getting the revenue is coming because I reducing the price. But this is the profit, by the way. This is not, because I have to deduct this number. Okay, so I'm gonna go to 280, the number is increasing. Okay, 290, it's increasing. Sorry, 250. Maybe. So if I go now lower, okay, or higher, okay, so 200, let's say 200. Where is 200? Sorry, 240. Okay. So there is a number where we cannot go below. Okay. So this is what we talk about. Like, I'm using the correlation. I'm not using the correlation because I like correlation. No, there is a purpose behind it. It's a business decision that I have to go behind. I always go back and find out, what do I need as a business decision? Okay, if we're talking about schooling, then we talk about, you have to find expenses. You see if some of the expenses at the university goes up, okay, what drives that price that goes up? Okay, so you have to find what is your driver. Okay, If we're talking about business, what is your driver for the business? Is it the ticket price? Is the number of seats? If your business is a restaurant, what drives your business? Is it your is it your location? Is it the number of attendees? Is it the number of waiters? You don't know. So you have to build this correlation in order to make a decision that can help you make that decision, okay? So this is what we're talking about. The correlation is, to me, is one of the most actually very, very important, it's an amazing thing in my mind that tells me it's quite difficult to pinpoint which one is the one that drives. So if you know who's driving, then you can make a good decision, okay? This is just a review. I wanted to, my presentation is too short, but I try to make
doctor,
it.
Thank you very much. No,
yeah.
It's perfect.
Yes. So this is just a review of what's happening, and I want to explain to you what's happening here. So we have a positive correlation, okay, which gives us an indicator. This is a stronger one, and this is the perfect one. Okay, this is also a negative correlation. This is strong, and this is perfect. This has no meaning. This is fantastic. I like this last one, which is nonlinear, which means that if you want to reach, if you have this data, means you're doing something correct until a certain moment at your business, and then you're losing money. Okay. Okay. So it's very beautiful. How can you read data? It's really, and if I share just numbers to you or anybody or me, if you just show me numbers, I cannot make sense of it. You put it here in a very similar format, and this is of course the correlation coefficient. I can understand what's happening. I can correct it. I can fix it, and I can test it and see if my assumptions is right or wrong. 90% or even higher, 95% of the intuitions behind this correlation coefficient is right on the money, okay? In every business decision that you make. And I'm sorry I bored you, but this is the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Not at all. Thank you very much, Dr. Nauman. Dr. Khawla is asking how would this relate to the online teaching, or how can we benefit from the importance of correlation in online teaching, in our online teaching experience, or in online learning in general?
Yeah, there is, you have to place the indicators from the beginning. How many attendees, what's the who's coming at the same time, what time are people are being quiet in the chat, how many people are on the session at one time. This is all indicators. So you can bring all this data together. You said the duration of people being on Zoom, people discussing how many people spoke at the same, how many people interacting. So you see, like, for example, I have 20 students and I have only 4 responding to this. So maybe that's an indicator that, so there is, it's unlimited. There is so many, you have to look at each situation and put an indicator. And the issue here, the challenge here is not just placing the indicator, is to find the other factor. Because if you look here, you have an X and Y. Yeah. You cannot just measure like my revenue, for example, if I'm talking about a restaurant. You cannot measure my revenue. You have to find an indicator. Okay, the success of my online. Okay, then I have to put my GPA. I have to put the quizzes. Maybe people who have participated. Okay, if the session before the final exam had more interaction, okay, then maybe the results of that assessment is high. If not, maybe it's wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe even if I calculated how the number of participants in the review before the final exam was high, but the final exam itself result was bad. Okay, then it's not indicator.
So you have to identify the indicators and then create the relationship between them, or see if there's a relationship between them.
Right, and you could that's the thing, you know, some people think that, you know, I know what's the cause of this problem, why my students are failing, and you make that assumptions because of difficulty in the chapter. Maybe no, it's something else. Maybe it's an outsider that's and a factor that you have not thought about. So you always you cannot make the assumption, you know, you are right. You have to make the assumption that these are the possible scenarios, and I am hoping that one of these scenarios is the right factor that causes this thing to happen. High GPA, low attendance, high attendance. I can put attendance. You know, maybe my teaching methods is not the right way. Maybe I'm speaking too loud. Maybe I can measure my pitch and see the number of students who are coming. Because usually this is my problem. I tend to shout. My kids, they say, Baba, please be quiet. We can hear you from 3 floors up. So.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor.
Yes.
Maybe also a relationship between the GPA, the absences, the overall performance of the students, related to what Dr. Shaima, the reports.
Of course, definitely,
maybe
yes.
Investigate further.
That's what this is my, I really enjoy Dr. Shaima's presentation, because really those variables, we can take them from Blackboard and we plug them in and we find out exactly where we are doing right or we're doing wrong, you know. If you're doing right, alhamdulillah, keep it the same. If we're doing wrong, it's not shame to admit I was wrong, okay? I was doing something, yes.
Yeah, we have a question, please. When there are many variables involved, how will we select and compare the important variables?
You can select one by one, or you can do a combination. The combination itself is the tricky part, because usually, like in a business model, it's not just one factor that drives the market, okay? It's multiple factors that joining them together. But you have to define the x-axis to be one, okay? Like, for example, in our situation, GPA, okay? So GPA is one indicator. Now in the bottom, you can do separate tables, like maybe attendance, maybe age, maybe absences, maybe high school GPA, maybe actually even ethnic. I don't want to do profiling, but it is true. You have to do profiling. Maybe a mixture of two. So you can have a mixture of two at the bottom until you drive. So there are statistic tools, okay, that makes these, that can find out actually, or maximize, to find which one has the biggest impact on a certain parameter.
Great, thank you, Dr. Nauman. I believe this really showed us how much we can do with the numbers that we have, and how much we can use the data in decision-making, investigating further the correlation. This will help us definitely in managing our classrooms better, whether it's online, face-to-face, and maximizing the benefits to our students as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nauman, for your time, and for all the attendees. It was a great pleasure to have you all with us today in the webinar. Thank you.